everybody. In another episode of our podcast, Cross Border Insights. My name is Radek Opalko. I'm from Media for You eCommerce agency, and I will be your host as usual. Today, we will be discussing the market, which is currently perceived as one of the fastest growing markets in the Central Eastern Europe. With his grown from almost 5 billions to 11 from 2019 to 2024. And my guest here is Mark. Mark is an expert on the Romanian market because this is the market we will be talking about. Hello, Mark. Please introduce yourself and tell us a few words what you are doing for this Romanian market.
Thanks for the introduction, Radek. As you mentioned, I'm Mark Turk from Consulting Hungary, and actually we support e-commerce businesses in international expansion, among them quite a few in the Romanian market. We basically support them comprehensively, so that's why our expertise lies not only in let's say logistics, but also we do customer service, marketplace management, translation and localization, and also we help them find the right fulfillment partners in the region. I was also invited by Sales Supply, so I have to thank them for the invitation also. Sales Supply is our close partner, and we are also starting an association with them called the Cross Border Commerce Association. This might be a little bit early to actually announce the start of the association, but still it's going to be upcoming. I think as soon as the podcast is out there, then you're going to also see the association as well with our website.
Thanks for introduction. First, thanks for explaining. Yes, it's worth saying that Sales Supply is a partner of this podcast together with Media for You. So, Romania, as I mentioned, very, very big growth. When I was in an Impact conference last year in Bucharest, there were a lot of speeches saying that Romania is going after Poland because Poland is also perceived among Czech Republic as a fast-growing markets here. Romania at the moment is third. So the growth is being seen. But if you could name which industries or sectors have the greatest potential, because target of this podcast are entrepreneurs which are planning to go through certain markets. They would like to know if their business, if their sector is if there is a chance for them there.
Maybe before I will talk about the categories that are the most popular, that are the most booming in the Romanian market, I would just like to add that, yes, this is true. This is the third largest e-commerce market in the Central Eastern Europe. Also, it is developing very fast. Actually, this is kind of like the quarter of the size of the Polish market. Mm-hmm. which is on the one hand is kind of like just one information, but what I always present Romania as is kind of a developing market, not only in a way that it develops like the Czech market or the Polish market, because if you take a closer look, actually, it's not only the actual market size growth that matters here, but also the opportunities that Romania has for the Polish sellers, for example. Mm-hmm. If you consider just the internet penetration, it's very similar to Czechia and Poland, for example. It's about 94%. But if we consider the online shoppers placing orders in the last 3 months, we will see that it's only 36% as per last year. And even if we consider like 12 months, a year, so anybody who purchased of the population, anybody who purchased online in the last 12 months, that's also like 60%. So there are a number of demographic groups actually that are not there yet buying online. So this is a huge opportunity for any foreign sellers actually to go there. And as the penetration goes on, the e-commerce penetration, you will see that you will have even more buyers than for example, last year.
Yeah, especially that I've read that coverage of the internet and the internet access is around 90 or even more than 90%. Yeah, and
correct.
As you mentioned, more than 60% has their first adventure with the online shopping. Yeah, so the market is really big. Yeah.
It is big, and there is this remaining 40%.
Another 40, which might need to be convinced.
Yeah. So there are huge potentials here. And when it comes to categories, not to avoid your question, actually, I can tell from results from, let's say, eMag, and also from Merchant Pro, for example, which is a local e-shop engine, just like PrestaShop, for example, or ShopTit. Based on their statistics, it seems that auto and motor is the most booming category. The order volume in 2024 grew by 57%, and food and drink and sport and beauty follows close after. Beauty, cosmetics, they are the most popular, among the most popular product categories for Romanians. But also fashion and shoes and pharma and electronics, they are also very promising. When it comes to Black Friday, which we're gonna get, I think, to later. Black Friday, for example, there we saw that the most popular categories were FMCG, beauty, but also toys and products for children and babies.
So listeners, being in these sectors, be aware that there is a business for you there. Yeah, mostly fashion. Yeah,
it's correct. This country is really into fashion, really into cosmetics, especially if you can offer free delivery. But we're gonna get to that.
We're gonna get there. Yeah.
So yeah, we're gonna get there.
And you mentioned a little bit about demographics. Yeah? And so how would you name the group of the customers who trust the online shopping most? How would you define? Because I've seen a very general report that this is the people between 20 and 50 years. Yeah, but it was very general. Probably you have the more accurate data. Yeah.
So when it comes to groups, demographic groups that are the most trusting to e-shops, the most likely to buy online, we can say that it's very similar on one hand to other markets in the region, but also there are some regional aspects when it comes to Romania. Age, you wouldn't be surprised. Young people are more likely to buy than old people, of course, online. But when it comes to education, for example, we see a huge difference between people who have higher education and between the people who have medium education. So people with higher education, for example, 92.5% according to the National Institute of Statistics buy online. Whereas with medium education, the same number is only 72.5. So there is a 20% difference. So the more educated they are, the more likely to buy from you. When it comes to gender difference, this is again very similar to the other markets in the region. Women buy online more often.
Okay.
There is a 6% difference between men and women. And when it comes to gender differences, it's important to know that there are categories again that are more booming with women and more popular with men. Among them would be sport and electronics, for example, that are more popular among
For
the
men?
male population. Correct.
Yeah.
And cosmetics and beauty, and also supplements and pharma, that would be more for the women because they're looking for these kind of products. But there is a very important difference between the Romanian market and, for example, the Czech or the Polish one. The rural and the urban areas are far away from each other.
Okay.
So when it comes to the urban penetration, it's 10% higher. So people are more likely to buy online if they live in the cities than if they the ones that live in the countryside. And this number is actually even more striking if you consider development areas like Bucharest, for example, the capital of Romania. There we have 64% e-commerce penetration, whereas in Oltenia, for example, which is a less developed zone, a less developed region, the same number is under 40%.
So while going there, we can expect that at the moment, most of our buyers will come from big cities and from educated people. Yeah.
Correct. But depending on the categories, there might be, again, differences between the cities and the countryside. So in the countryside, they would more willing to, or more towards furniture, home accessories, and gardening items. And Q-commerce is more, of course, more popular in cities, as are sporting goods, for example. So if you expand to other countries, that's why I always tell you, it's very important to actually consult with someone local that can help you actually with the market research, with the market scan part, so you can prepare for these kind of tendencies that you can see. So maybe if you sell sporting goods, then you will know that you will sell probably to men and probably to city people, urban people. And based on that, you can also build up your marketing. You can actually target these customer bases better, maybe with bigger investments. And that's how you can actually scale up your project a bit better.
It's very important to remember that, yeah. And when we went through those groups and categories, what's the most important for you as you and for in general for a Romanian customer when shop online? What makes people willing to buy from online, not to traditional shop?
You know, I was thinking very hard about this before we started this podcast, actually. So I don't really buy every day online. But if I buy, then I have a very, very high expectation towards these shops. And one of the most important criterion for me is the possibility to pay cash on delivery.
Okay.
And it turns out that quite a few other Romanians and other people from the region think the same. So COD, for example, is one of the most important factors here. But also we can say that generally Romania is a price sensitive market. The salaries are not so high and people would like to cut costs wherever they can. So price is another important factor. Actually, 74% of Romanian customers would consider price as the most important influencing factor. Also, delivery time is similar. Half of them would consider that. Fast delivery is very important here. And the third one is customer reviews, for example. So
Okay.
35%, 1 out of 3 Romanians would check the customer reviews, and they expect customer reviews from local customers in their native language in Romania.
Thank you. We will also discuss this further in more details, but I was wondering because I've been in Romania also 10 years ago, and when I've spoken with people from there, they were saying that paying by cash is the most important for them also. I was wondering how it changed across those years. You mentioned that it's still very important, but in general, what are the most popular beside cash on delivery payment methods and delivery methods? You mentioned about this, but if you could explain wider, besides the COD, how people buy, how people pay, how would like to pay?
Lucky for foreign sellers, like Polish sellers, because the collection of cash on delivery is actually not an easy part for you.
Yeah.
Because if you collect it in lei, then your courier or your cross-border logistic partner, they will transfer it in lei to your, let's say, euro bank account or maybe zloty bank account.
After
Then there
some
is
time, yeah. So this is
after some time, of course. So this is kind of like 2 weeks or 1 month on a month basis, but still they will transfer it, and then you're gonna lose a lot of money actually in conversion fees.
Yeah.
So this is on the one hand huge challenge actually for Polish sellers, for any kind of foreign sellers in the Romanian market, but also lucky for us, and that's how I started my sentence actually. Other kind of online payment methods are getting more and more popular. So last year, I even saw statistics where actually bank account online payments or bank account payments actually grew a bit, so much so that they surpassed the popularity of COD. But I wouldn't say that this is a real tendency. So I would be careful with the interpretation of these kind of statistics. Still, we can see that online payments, especially card payments, are getting more and more popular. So they pay with Visa and MasterCard more and more often. I mean, Romanian customers. And also digital wallets are gaining traction here. I wouldn't really say that BNPL, buy now, pay later, would be a popular option here, but we can also see that there are some tendencies. So it is getting more and more popular every year. And also there are e-commerce associations in Romania strongly promoting other kind of payments because they also have trouble with cash on delivery, especially refused parcels and refused cash on delivery orders. And yeah, this is kind of a must for them as well locally.
Yeah, but if you could try to dig into deeper, why people prefer this cash? Is this something usual in Romania that people like to have cash? They don't like to pay in general by card? Because we've had a few episodes, and for example, in the United Kingdom, it's been said that you can have a problem even when you have cash because they do not allow that in some places right now in the UK. Yeah. So here we have kind of opposite. So would you say that Romanian in general like to pay in cash or just in the online shopping? Because I don't know, because they need to see the product first of all and then they are eager to pay.
It is probably the second one. So as you can see, these countries in the Balkans, these markets, e-commerce markets, these are developing in a way that actually people are more trusting towards physical shops in a way because they can actually see the products, they can actually, get on hold on the products and the parcels. And Romania is one of these Balkan markets where they are less trusting towards e-commerce in general. And that also, we can see the same kind of aspect, the same kind of phenomenon in the way that they would also have huge problem with the delivery time. So this is kind of like you place an order, you are waiting for it, you get frustrated because it doesn't come. So you see, this is also a sign of like low trust towards e-commerce and online sellers.
Lack of trust. This is what I was
Mind
thinking.
you, and mind you, historically, Romanians, they were scammed by quite a lot of foreign sellers from Asia, actually.
Okay.
So they have a negative experience as well. And, this also has some kind of effects, for example, that you can have, for example, a check on delivery kind of option with most Romanian local couriers. This is a non-existing kind of delivery method in anywhere else other than the Balkans, actually. This means that you can actually ask the courier to open the box, open the parcel, and show you how the product looks from the outside. You cannot really try it out, but still you can check it.
See if it's it. Yeah, because we all heard the stories that you, for example, buy smartphone, you open the box and there is something else inside. Yeah.
Correct, and that happened to quite a lot of Romanians actually, and that's why this kind of delivery method became popular.
So
of course, we can see a tendency that they are more and more trusting, but that's why for foreign sellers especially, this is very important to localize your website, localize your presence, so that the local customers would think of you as a local e-shop, not like a foreign seller, because again, they have low trust towards e-commerce in general.
So it's more bad experience that then Romanians are like that. Yeah, it's not the habit of Romanians. It's rather bad experience in the past. Yeah, which provoked this behavior.
I think this is the historical background, and also this is general tendency in developing markets actually.
Yeah, I was a little bit laughing because in Poland, when you order, especially electronics, there are also signs. Please check the package in the presence of the courier and let us know if everything is okay. But no one is doing that. Yeah, but there is such option. Yeah,
at least there is an option. It seems. For other countries like Hungary, for example, and Slovakia, I was having troubles, for example, with one of our clients looking for this kind of option so they can offer it to the local customers. These local couriers, other than Romania, Bulgaria, they don't really provide this kind of service.
Okay, so we've spoken a little bit how Romanians are and how they are not, what is provoking some of their behaviors, but in general, how would you define the consumer profile in the Romanian market?
I mean, it's quite easy. I have already brought up some aspects that you have to think about. The price sensitivity is a very important factor here. So you have to be very, very conscious about your pricing. And it means that you have to offer discounts, bundles, and you have to take part in promotions or even give away free gifts, for example, some kind of freebies to the customers, because they very much like this. And also, there's another aspect to this one. If they are price sensitive, they're going to check marketplaces and price comparison sites first. So they're going to compare pricing, they're going to compare products, they're going to compare offers and delivery times, for example, delivery conditions. And that's why you have to be there on these kind of platforms if you can, because they would be likely to find you there, for example. And also the trust sensitivity is another factor. The same reason you have to be there for the same reason on these kind of other channels, the other platforms that they're going to check, because that will also raise your localization value, the local value that you have. 43% of them, for example, I mean, Romanian consumers and Romanian customers would consider product documentation in the native language very important. And also 25 to 30% of them would check the online reviews, because they are the very important factors again here. And also we have mobile first kind of approach here in the market. So around 80% of customers would use a smartphone. Even if they would start their product searches and their purchase there, maybe they would finish on the laptop. But it means that you have to localize and optimize your website locally if you're a foreign seller, for the mobile phones as well, for the smartphones as well, the mobile devices. Because if that doesn't work, if your website is lagging, if your website is crashing, you wouldn't get results. You wouldn't really get any kind of conversions.
But I would say it's not an exception, yeah, because we do it from day to day, daily operation for us as an e-commerce agency, and we see that it's become more and more important in each market. Yeah, Romania is not an exception. Yeah, this mobile first approach is also our approach from years right now, because as you mentioned, there is not a lot of people right now buying directly from the laptop or from the desktop computer. Yeah, usually people are making this decisions while, I don't know, driving metro, bus or something, reading your smartphone, scrolling down and so on. So it's a very, very important thing, yeah, currently to focus on these mobile devices, yeah.
And it is very important for foreign sellers as well, because if you don't really start your expansion project to Romania, for example, with let's say Shopify or WooCommerce, and you have like a custom built solution, then you definitely have to check if that works for mobile. And this is something that we often see when we are auditing websites, for example, in Romania, for example, Polish sellers, they start their project there, they start selling, and then we realize that there is something wrong with the conversion rate. People are not converting. And then if you check their mobile version, the mobile version of their website in Romania, you're going to see that doesn't really work. And, you would be surprised. But that's also kind of like an important aspect here as well.
Yeah, you touched also one of further points I was supposed to ask later on, but I will jump to it, because you said that shop needs to look like Romanian. They like to have it like our own. So what should the shop owner paid attention to when it's translating their shop, localizing their shop to the Romanian market? Because you already said that one thing is that, for example, product information or user manual should be in Romanian. This is physical thing, yeah. So I suppose that English manuals are not welcome. So this is also very important. But according to the online shop, what should they focus on?
I'm glad that you brought up English, by the way. In Romania, actually, 1/3 of the population can hold up a conversation like this in English. and also like everyday conversations. So we're gonna I think also touch upon customer service, which is a very important part of the localization of your eShop. But this is also true for translation as well. So that's why it's very important, because you have to translate it to the local language, to the native language. If you don't translate it, then you're going to see that you will not have the same kind of results that you would. So it's kind of like a sunk cost fallacy if you think that you can actually really conquer the Romanian market without actually using Romanian here. When it comes to translation, there are certain aspects that you have to think about, that you have to be careful with, especially when it comes to the spelling. Romanians, they have a different kind of alphabet. Radek, you're from Poland, so you also have your kind of like this crossed out. Yeah, you have your own alphabet. In Romanian, there are also other kind of like special characters, diacritics, and accents. For example, the A with like the bottom half of the circle called the brief. This is kind of like a sound of like and it is actually a differentiating sign. So that's why there is an accent on this, because, for example, the word payment, plata, would be different if you spell it with an A or with an A with a brief, so with the special character. Of course, it does not mean that, if Romanians, they read a foreign website, for example, and they don't really see the diacritics, they wouldn't understand it. They understand it, of course, because they know Romanian, but still they would immediately recognize that you are not a local seller. And once this happens, this is a friction point, as we call it in conversion rate optimization. And if it's a friction point, then they're going to start having doubts about it. They're going to go to the company name. They're going to check the return address. They're going to check if you have a customer service number. And it is kind of like a negative circle that circles around, and you get no conversion from this kind of visitor, for example. Also, product names, often they are auto-translated. And that's something that I often see, e-shoppers, owners, they would like to spare costs on their expansion because it's very risky. So that's why they're going to run it through ChatGPT or DeepL, and they're going to get relatively, good quality translations. But more often than not, it happens that some product names are not correctly translated, which is not only
as in the Asian market.
as in the Asian markets, correct. So this is pretty much the similar thing. So you would get, for example, names like costume de baie. For example, this is a Romanian name for a bathing suit. But we saw it when auditing a website that this was actually assigned to a kimono. So, this is something that they would understand, but they wouldn't really buy it. Nobody would buy it because the image shows a different kind of product that the product name tells you. So if I were them, for example, I wouldn't buy from this kind of eShop. But we can also say that if you have customer service, they might go there and ask them. And that's what happens quite often. They call the customer service and they're going to ask, okay, what is this? This is the costume de baie or a kimono. And that's also why customer service is very important here. But sometimes it's also a damage on your SEO. So search engines, they're looking for keywords. If your product names are not correctly translated, you're going to miss the most important keywords, for example. And if that happens, you're gonna miss out on a quite big organic traffic. And again, if you want to cut costs, that's the way to go. You don't really want to invest much into PPC because that's going to cost you a lot. You rather want to build up your website so you get organic traffic, which you don't really have to pay for.
Yeah, you mentioned the automatic names for the products and bad names for the product, but what are the other red flags indicated poorly performed localization?
Yeah, so this is part of translation is also localization in this way, but there are also certain aspects that you have to consider as localization issues. So for example, we often see that even if they use WooCommerce or Shopify and, the currency is automatically converted and changed to RON, meaning lei, But we also have like textual strings where you can see that, for example, they offer free delivery over 800 zlotys, which will be there. It wouldn't tell a lot to the Romanian customers, and it will tell a lot when it comes to the fact that you are a foreign seller, a Polish seller in this way. And that's when they're going to check the return address. If the return address is Polish, then they're going to see that, okay, that's going to be a lot of trouble if there is any kind of problem. So probably they're going to step away from purchasing here.
So
And
details.
also the small details, but these are very easy to actually catch. Sometimes we also see that default pages, like very, very standard pages, contact pages, the title itself is not correctly translated. So you would see contactazi, for example, which is not actually inherently bad. They're gonna see that this is the contact page where you can contact them, the eShop. But the more standard way, the traditional way is contact, and that's it. I mean, contact, of course, in Romanian. That would also raise some red flags. And local reviews, again, if they are missing, if the reviews are from, let's say, trusted shops, for example, or CNL, then Romanians they would not know CNL, they would not know trusted shops. One thing is for sure that they would probably have some kind of idea about your origin, not being Romanian, of course.
So it's very important for people who listen in this to take this under consideration, yeah, while preparing. So
Correct.
enough about localization at the moment, but you mentioned the question because we skipped, so I would like to get back to it. You mentioned customer service preferences. If you could describe it a little bit more, how does it look like in Romania?
Yeah, so for now close to 10 years, we are operating in the Romanian market. And actually, we see that these customers might be interpreted as more demanding. But of course, now we know why they are more, let's say, or less flexible and more demanding in a way. 44% of customers expect 0 to 24 non-stop 24/7 customer service, even evening and weekend service. So mind you, this is a very huge expectation. But also, if you consider this, especially evening and weekend, when do you have time to buy actually anything online? It's weekend and it's probably evening after you finish working. And you see that customer service is also important. It's just not only like the customer expectation is like this, and then you have to meet these kind of expectations, but also it's good for you because you can actually catch them in the right moment as they are making their purchasing decisions. And that's why, for example, at Consulting Hungary, we also introduced evening and weekend customer service. And when it comes to general preferences, I would say the native support is very important. As we mentioned, 1 out of 3 Romanians they speak English, but 2 out of 3 they don't really. So
With
you
a
can
local number,
get
yeah,
this.
with the local number probably, yeah.
Correct, because they're gonna call you. Phone contact is very popular. Of course, there are other kind of channels other than email and phone that are very popular, especially when it comes to social media. So Facebook and Instagram, TikTok. Make sure that you are reachable on these kind of channels as well, because this is not only marketing, but they would also find you and contact you there. So that's why your customer service has to be maybe integrated in one place so they can handle all these platforms.
Yeah, this is very important what you are saying, because nothing worse than you are on the page, you see the product you would like to buy, you have a question, yeah, you go to the contact section and you see, oh, our hotline is from 10 till 16, yeah. So when I was at work and I was not available for shopping, yeah, so I'm planning to do shopping in the evening, as you mentioned, yeah, and this is not a very common thing that there is someone there available. Yes, of course, AI changed that, and always you can speak with the robot, yeah. But I don't know how it is in Romania, but in Poland still a lot of people are complaining that they don't want to speak to robot, they want to have a live person there, yeah, to talk to.
And of course, and I think that also all comes down to the fact that they are less trusting. They want to speak to a human being, to a human agent. because they have real questions and they cannot really, in a way, make the purchase themselves for themselves, just like you would see in the German market, where they are very much self-reliant in this way, or self-checkout or self-service, self-customer
Yeah,
service.
because they are
It's
doing
pretty
a
much
lot of research also, the Germans. Yeah, because we've had also episode
correct.
about Germans, and it was said that they are making a lot of research before buying. So they probably don't need less. I see that people, this region, Balkan region, or and Romania, as more, I would say, spontaneous. Yeah, so I like something, I want to buy, I will not check 20 tables with the parameters. I prefer to call, to ask someone, hey, please tell me if it's a good choice for me, and if the persons would advise me good, I will buy. This is how I see it, but maybe I'm I'm a little bit stereotypical, so please tell me if I'm not.
No, this is actually couldn't be more true, and I wouldn't say it's a stereotype for the Balkans. They are very, very friendly people. They are very spontaneous people. I have my friends and my business partners from this region, so we are very, very friendly. It's not like you would have, for example, negotiation when it comes to B2B kind of contacts and communication. You would have a negotiation, and that will not happen, like with Germans or with English or with French entrepreneurs. You would have maybe an informal settings. You would bring some beers, maybe, and that's where actual business communication goes, where actual business connections are made. Having a beer, talking about other stuff, not e-commerce. Sometimes we see that there are e-commerce associations, for example. They have their own camps, for example, summer camps, where they have some kind of trip together. And also, that's why conferences are very important in the region. One of them would be ecom team in Brussels, for example, in September 18 and 19. We will be there. So if you're interested in the Romanian market, I very much warm-heartedly welcome you there and invite you to there. And this is something that I would say their personal connection is also important in B2B as well, not only in B2C.
So very social.
Correct. Very
Also
social.
important while preparing the communication, yeah, for the potential buyers. And when we are talking about communication, so for me goes another question: what are the best strategies to promote your product while you're there? Yeah, so I went through, I built a shop. Yeah, so I've done the technical part with some kind of software agency. I've done the localization with some other agency which helped me. Now I have to promote it. Yeah, so what channels are the best? What tools people should use when going to Romania?
So if I consult with e-commerce businesses, generally in e-commerce and in international expansion, I always say that there are two actually sides of the coin that you have to consider here. So one of them would be, similarities, and the other one would be differences. Now we're talking about similarities. So basically, the CE region is very, very similar. Every country is very similar. Facebook, Instagram, and Google, maybe some TikTok here and there, would be the most important social media and search engines that you have to consider. And when it comes to marketing, you can basically base your marketing on Meta and on Google. And these two will actually, in the very beginning for sure, take you a long way. And then you have to consider other kind of marketing channels. I would say local influencers can be very, very promising, can be very important, especially in the later phase of your expansion. With Shopify, for example, you would find them quite easily because you have an app, an add-on for this Shopify collabs, if you've heard of it. And then it's very easy to actually contact them and ask them to promote your services, promote your products. But you also may think about marketplaces and price comparison sites as kind of like additional marketing channel, additional leg to your expansion plans. Because for emac, for example, it's quite easy to just be there, to like upload your products without any kind of huge optimization work or any kind of translation work, you can just go there, register for free. Listing is free also. This is different from Allegro and Amazon, for example, where you have to pay for this. And you can basically enter other marketplaces like that, Altex and Pepita also, Vivre and Sell, just like that. And you enter it, and then you might use them as sales channels, or you might use them as marketing channels. You can decide on this, actually. Main thing is that you have to be there, because the localization, again, will be very important here as well. And of course, I have to mention Compari, which I haven't, I guess, so far. Compari is part of Eureka group. So this is the same kind of Eureka, Árkereső, and also Compari, and Pazaruvai, for example. Compari is the local price comparison sites. Sites people will start their product searches and their purchase path there, and they're gonna, if they find you there, you might get nice conversions. And also, it's not so difficult to actually enter this either.
I'm laughing because this was one of my further questions about the marketplaces and price comparison, but we have it already covered. But besides eMAG, which everyone knows that is a leader in Romania, how would you say about the other players, including those global players which you mentioned, like Amazon, eBay, or Allegro?
Romanians, they buy from Amazon and eBay, for example, and other kind of AliExpress, for example. But these are not really locally recognized sellers or locally recognized websites. These are rather foreign sellers, and Romanians know that they are foreign sellers, and they buy from them either anyway. There are also local players, and I might have forgotten to mention actually to why why this is very important to consider other smaller marketplaces, because you're right, eMAG is the biggest one, the most visited e-commerce website, not only marketplace. But also you have to consider the fact that there are 53,000 vendors, and that was 2 years ago. So this is more close now to 60,000 vendors on eMAG. And that's why you have to consider other kind of smaller marketplaces, because there your outreach, your actual customer base might be bigger, because you don't really have to like split the cake, with your competitors. Among them, for example, OLX and Altex and Vivre and Sell would be very important to consider. And of course, we can say that there are other kind of foreign players entering the market, just like Scrooge, for example, or Scrooge, the Greek marketplace. It's kind of like a Greek Allegro.
Okay.
This is also a huge development. You can consider them. They are getting better and better in Romania. They are gaining traction. But also, I think the reason why you might want to enter Scrooge is because you can reach Bulgaria and Greece with Scrooge. It's kind of like an international marketplace, just like eMAG. With eMAG, not only Romania will open to you, but also Hungary and Bulgaria at the same time, quite easily. And depending on your product category, you might want to dig deeper into one or another. Pepita, for example, would be very good in furniture and hobby and leisure. OLX would be an interesting choice for you. It's kind of like changing from a C2C kind of marketplace to a B2C kind of marketplace. But there are all other kind of vertical specialized marketplaces. Sell among them would be a specialized marketplace for electronics and tech.
So everything depends what you are selling, yeah? So because I suppose
Correct.
that product category is one thing, the other is type of product, if it's new or if it's used. I suppose that also Vinted is also available as something where you can sell second-hand clothes, yeah? So in general, eMAG is a must, I would say, and the rest you need to dig deeper and verify where your products would fit more in. Yeah.
This is actually very individual to each company. So depending on your product portfolio, depending on your pricing strategy, you would find that email might be considered as a must, but you might start your localized website instead, because maybe you cannot really hit the same kind of margins. You cannot really hit the same kind of price level that your competitors are doing there. Or maybe you would find it troublesome to actually maintain email. And in the long run, I would say a localized website would be a must. People are more likely to buy from you actually and recognize you as a trusted seller if you have a local website. Mm-hmm. And if you can build up a loyal customer base, then your whole work, your everyday life would be much easier, because you're going to get recurring customers. And this is pretty much up to you. Again, if you want to enter the market and test it, feel the vibe and feel the water, and you might consider marketplaces, because they are very easy. They offer a very easy entrance to these kind of markets. But also on the other hand, you can start building your website and you can start building your e-shop locally.
Okay, it sounds reasonable because, as you mentioned, there is a lot of it. I didn't even remember half of the names you put.
And that's actually the half of the names that I could put in here. so there are a number of marketplaces.
Very big research is recommended. Another very big thing I would say is, we've done the research, we have the shop, we have promotion, people are buying, but people are also returning. So if you could tell us a little bit, what are the returning habits of Romanian customers, and what are the procedures, regulations which should companies introduce or have in their procedures to find themselves in the Romanian market?
On the one hand, you have to consider that, speed again would be very important here. Mm-hmm. So on the one hand, they expect delivery, very fast delivery. Most of them would accept 3 to 5 working days actually, but 1/3 of them would expect next day delivery. Mm-hmm. Next day delivery, would be probably impossible actually physically and virtually for Polish sellers if you ship from Poland. But still, the sooner you get the products shipped to the customer, the more likely they are to actually accept the package and take it, and also to not have any kind of complaints that would, for example, increase the customer service volumes and the customer service capacity needs, for example. If you get this kind of Wismo, where is my order questions all the time, it's going to be something that in the long run would be very, very hard to manage. And you don't really need it. So if you can optimize your shipping, which you can actually, Poland and Romania, the line haul between these two countries are very, very strongly developing. You can actually deliver goods fast to the customers. But again, if they want to return, it fast. And not only fast, but they want to have a withdrawal period at least 14 days. That's the standard, the European standard. But half of the Romanian customers, they expect 30 days instead.
Okay, and that's
there are some of them that would expect 60 days, for example. That would be the ideal for them. And the more you align with these kind of expectations, the better you can actually engage with these customers. Again, because of these kind of expectations and interpretations, maybe legal documents are very important to be localized, especially return policies. So even if you have your own documents in Polish, even if you have your own documents in Czech, for example, it's very important to have it in Romanian. It's very important to actually have trust marks on the website to the local customer protection, ANPC, because that would guarantee that you are covered in some way towards the customers, towards these kind of expectations. And if you don't really have a local return address, on the one hand, they didn't buy from you in the first place, or you can have troubles with the Romanians. They are again very demanding, so they're gonna call your customer service or they're gonna email you, and they're going to be very frustrated if they cannot return to a local address and they have to ship it. Of course, shipping is on them again because they are withdrawing from the order. Now, this is not like a guarantee issue, which is a different kind of area. And they're going to be very frustrated about this if that happens. That's why a local return address would be very important, especially because you might also have refused packages. And I'm going to get back to this one a bit later. But before we discuss delivery challenges and other kind of challenges for foreign sellers in the Romanian market, I would also say that the refund period is very important. So 40% of Romanian people expect refunds to be made within 5 working days. And again, 32% would only wait for 1 working day. So you have to be very, very fast, not only delivering, not only in reacting to customer questions or customer issues, but you also have to make the refunds very, very fast, meaning that you will also need return management and administration set in place in Romania as well, locally, again, preferably at a local return address.
And the free returns is a must, or are Romanians, because there is a tendency right now, especially in Western Europe, that you have to pay to return the goods. And how it goes in Romania? How would they go through that?
Generally, if they withdraw from the contract, from the order, from the purchase, then they have to actually ship it back on their cost, on their side.
Okay.
But you can make it as a competitive edge. And this is this is becoming more and more like a general expectation towards e-shops that you offer free return, not only free delivery. Because again, price sensitivity. They want to get their products for free and they want to return it for free, which is quite obvious. If you don't really have money in your pocket, then you don't really want to pay for a product that you won't buy in the end, after all.
Yeah, the idea, especially in the fashion sector, is to avoid those tons of garbage later on, because the clothes are not being sold again. So this was the intention. I was wondering if it is effective for the Romanians, this strategy that you have to pay for the return, then you will think twice before buying something. Yeah.
I wouldn't say that you can be competitive if you really want to stress this out. But you can meet the general legal framework, general legal requirements by not offering free delivery or free return. But of course, this is a competitive edge again, so you might want to think about this. Maybe not in fashion, because again, the return rate would be different. But if you sell, for example, furniture, maybe you can also call your local couriers, they can pick it up, and maybe that's easier for you because actually they have to place it on pallets. They have to ship it on pallets, for example. Maybe they can also restock it, which is also important when it comes to like these kind of distances between Poland and Romania, thousands of kilometers. You don't really want to have, pallets going back and forth because someone refused it or returned it.
Yeah, and so probably the local warehouse is also a kind of option in such cases. Yeah, because you mentioned that local return address is important. Also, the fast delivery is important. So maybe in the beginning, the selling from the Polish warehouse is a good for start, but later on, customers should think about having the local warehouse there. Yeah.
Correct. I would say once you know the turnover, once you know the high turnover, the very frequently ordered products, and then you can actually set up a local stock of that. Then you can also use a hybrid solution. So you ship part of your portfolio from Poland, and you can also ship from the fulfillment warehouse those products that you have there. There, of course, an integrator would be needed on the technical side, but still, this can actually bring you better and better results. And then, after all, maybe if you're very successful, then you can also set up your own warehouse there, or your complete product portfolio can actually be entered in the fulfillment warehouse that you use there.
So besides this aspects regarding to this, because you mentioned a little bit about legal aspects, yeah? So what are the local regulations affecting online trade? Is it difficult to comply it, or are they more or less similar to the European law?
As a consultant, I'm a bit afraid of answering this question, because I'm going to say it's very easy and it's hassle free, but maybe someone will get up and start selling there, and they're going to face some local regulations that they didn't expect. So one thing is for sure, it's individual again. So make sure you contact local consultants, local friends, local partners. Maybe you also have some friends who also sell in the Romanian market and they know that kind of category. And depending on the category, there would be additional regulations. But one thing is for sure, that given the fact that Romania is part of the EU, you wouldn't be out of solutions here. If you are in one-stop shop OSS, you can actually start selling in no time. Local VAT would only be actually necessary, and the local company would only be necessary later when, for example, you would start a fulfillment warehouse, working with a fulfillment warehouse there. Then if you store goods in Romania, then you would have to comply with local regulations, and that you have to purchase a local VAT, register a local VAT, and you have to generally comply and file VAT kind of filings. But again, this is not really a must in the beginning. So you can actually start probably with less hassle that you would think. And if you don't really believe me, then just ask your friends or other kind of Polish sellers. You're going to see that on eMAG, if you go there, for example, you're going to see that there are a lot of Czech and Polish sellers. How else could they be there if they have to spend a lot of time
Just
and
go and
resources on
sell
this?
in Romania. Yeah, it's not a problem. Yeah, yeah. I imagine it's a part of the European Union, as you mentioned. So most of the regulations are the same. Yeah, I suppose. Yeah.
Correct. Of course, there are, again, other kind of local regulations like the e-factura system, but this only concerns actually local entities. Or if you have a local VAT and you are registered there in Romania, then yeah, you have to be very compliant, and you have to file your invoices, for example, to send your invoices and upload them to the authorities locally. But again, this is something that now it is not that difficult that it was in the past. For example, with BaseLinker, with Base.com, eFactura is, for example, directly integrated. So if you use BaseLinker to integrate your shop with eMAG, then you can immediately integrate it with eFactura as soon as you have a local VAT or a local entity.
So, are there any other challenges while entering the Romanian market on which should the potential seller focus on? How would you say here?
I think we already covered lots of them. So delivery time, fast delivery. You have to be as fast as can be, either from Poland or from a fulfillment warehouse, depending on your ideas and projects. Also, we covered COD, Ramburts in Romania, for example. This is also a challenge for sellers. Building trust in the customer base. That is already something that we covered here, but we didn't really get to the part of zip codes, for example. Codoli postale, as Romanians would say, are very problematic, and not because Romanians, they don't really have some kind of idea of their zip codes, of their postal codes, but because there was a change in the system in 2003. So many customers would use and keep on using their old kind of zip codes, and you would get that, but the couriers will use, of course, the new one. So there might be some cases where wrong addresses are shown there, so you have to verify them. But this is again something that if you have the right consultants, if you have some kind of customer service in place, then that's very easy to do. Especially this is difficult because, for example, with eMAG, most often what happens is if you don't really use the integrated couriers, meaning same day or fan courier or cargus, if you don't use these kind of integrated couriers, then you're not going to get the zip code, even if they provided it. So you're going to get to edit, and you're going to have to edit manually, or you have to, work out some automatic solutions, which we have already in place at Consulting Hungary. We do this every day. So we either do verification calls or we actually adjust the addresses so that the couriers can go and actually deliver the parcels.
Is it a real problem? Are there any statistics saying that such amount of packages does not reach the buyers because of this postal code problem?
There is actually, and more and more couriers are actually introducing a wrong address notification service, for example, just like we did, because we see that there are a number of undeliverable parcels that we don't really go and try to deliver again, because we don't really have the full address, the complete address, or maybe it is not only the zip code, maybe the address is not correct actually. Sometimes they provide house numbers, they don't provide house numbers, maybe the street is non-existing or the street is spelled wrong. So there is actually there are quite a few issues with logistics, including zip codes and addresses, and it can cause some return rates or refused parcel rates that are very high. So you would even get like 30% of your parcels undelivered. And we actually had Consulting Hungary, we have a blog. If you go there, you can also read about a case study where we had a similar kind of problem in the Romanian market and how we helped optimize the logistic part for our clients so that they can reach an acceptable refused parcel rate, for example.
So this is something which also you should take in mind while planning to go to Romania. Yeah,
I couldn't stress it more. Yep.
Zip code issue, I would say. Yeah, zip
Yep.
code
Yep.
gate.
Zip code gate. Correct like that. Yeah.
Okay, Mark. So last question, because you mentioned a little bit Black Friday, but what are the other most important shopping seasons? Where it's better to sell and where it's better not to sell?
Again, so Black Friday, but you might not recognize how big Black Friday is actually in Romania. So, for example, EMAG just published some results last year from the last Black Friday in last November. In the first 30 minutes, meaning half an hour, 44.2 million euro was the order value, and close to 600,000 products were sold. Again, 30 minutes. So this is pretty much something that you have to be, looking out for. If you miss out on this, you miss out on a great big opportunity, a great big chance. For other kind of holiday seasons, I would say that this is again very similar, two sides of the coin. Very similarly, they have Christmas. Romanians celebrate Christmas. This is actually in sync with the Catholic Christmas. However,
Okay.
Easter is not always in sync, so it's not always on the same day as the Catholic Easter because they celebrate the Orthodox one. Next year, for example, and if you are selling in Romania, make sure that you take note of this. April 12th will be the Orthodox Easter, whereas in Poland and in Hungary, for example, we're going to celebrate the Catholic Easter falling on April the 5th next year.
So one week earlier, yeah.
1 week earlier. So you have to localize your website, you have to localize your products, you have to localize everything, including your promotions and marketing. Because if you're going to start your promotion for Easter and you're going to invest a lot of money into an Easter that is not really happening, and of course there is just 1 week, so you might say this is kind of a preparation period, but still it's better to know when Romanians will be likely to actually celebrate Easter and buy new clothes, by the way, because that's something that is kind of like a tradition in Romania. They would buy new clothes for Easter.
I also heard from one of my colleagues, which was living in Romania, that, for example, Valentine's Day. It's also the Romanians have their own Valentine's Day. Yeah, so there is this one 14th of February, which is for all the world, but Romanians have their own. Is it true?
It's true. There is another kind of Valentine's Day in Romania, but this is not really. It is getting more and more popular in e-commerce as well, but it's not gaining that much traction. So I would not really consider it as a main shopping season. But if if you want to localize your marketing, why not try something local, some local taste, and maybe you can also build up a local campaign, even if it's not really like a shopping season per se. You can actually start a campaign on the Romanian Valentine's Day, for example.
And when is it? What's the date?
Yeah, I really have to check it now. I remember it's kind of around the
Yeah,
actual
because
date.
Valentine's Day is kind of very
Dragobeta is actually on February the 24th, so
okay.
10
So
days
it's a
later
little
than
bit later on,
14th.
but also in February. Yeah, because
Correct.
in Poland also Valentine's Day is not something like shopping season. Yeah, because we'll have a lot of but more marketing actions. Yeah, so probably you should think about it. Same with Halloween. Yeah, I don't know if it's very popular in Romania and Poland. There is a lot of things going on, but I wouldn't also say that it's something special. It's in fashion. Yeah, you can bring the collection for that and something like that, but it's important to note down that there is something like that and you should adjust your marketing to that. Yeah.
Correct. And I think that is kind of the most important part of the all kind of expansion projects. So if you go to another country, you want to show respect to the customers, and you want to win them for yourself, but you also want to be respectful. And if you consider this kind of local aspects, local events, local celebrations, local holidays, then they're going to recognize that you are welcoming towards them, you are opening to them, and they're going to open to you as well.
And you will feel you will be perceived, as you mentioned, as more local. Yeah. So this shop, this company knows our custom behavior, our what we are doing. So this is pretty important for the Romanian people, as you mentioned. Yeah. So it's very important to remember that. Okay, Mark, thanks a lot. That was my last questions. If you would like to add something at the end, this is the moment.
Thank you very much. I would say I can only just, promote Romania and encourage all foreign sellers to actually try this. Kind of like a hidden gem, I would say. And if you consider Romania, consider other countries as well in the Balkans. They're very, very developing, very much developing markets. And visit us in Romania, visit us in Hungary, visit us in Bulgaria. We are there at events as well and also in person physically. We have teams all around the place in Europe, just like Sales Supply would. And visit us, and then we can also have a chit chat about your ideas and projects. And I would be very, very happy to actually help e-commerce businesses with real problems, real challenges, and be more actual and relevant to your kind of expectations, needs, ideas, any kind of challenges that you would have.
And if you heard our podcast and if you are interested, we convinced you, we invite you to contact us. We as Media for You we can help you technically. Sales supply with consulting Hungary, we can help you with the rest. So just contact me or Mark, and then we will make things going on.
I should hope so. Yep.
Thanks again. Nice having you here, Mark, and see you in the future, maybe in some other projects.
Thanks for the invitation. I'm looking forward to any kind of other projects as well. Thanks, Radek. Goodbye.